Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm T with Teresa H Creates, and today we're going to wrap up our junk mail junk journal. Let's go ahead and put this signature together. I did go ahead and reinforce the edges of the covers of these signatures with some washi tape. And now let's go ahead and reinforce the spine. This is a very thin envelope, so I just want a little bit extra. And it is going to overlap this some, so I should have probably put it down before I decorated that window, but what's done is done, and it's more important to me to have a structurally sound journal than a perfect journal. So let me go ahead and put this down. Anytime I use washi, I also use a liquid glue. If you've worked with washi tape, the tack on it is super light and it will come up if you don't glue it down. All right, let's trim this off. I'm not going to do the back side, just the inside. I'm going to burnish it down, make sure it's on there good. I'm going to use a 5-hole pamphlet stitch to put this signature together. There are so many pieces in here of varying lengths. I just want to make sure that I get everything stitched in. So first, I'm going to make sure that I've got everything like lined up correctly. All these different elements, because they are different heights here. I want to try to center everything as much as possible. Go, and then centerpiece here. Okay. And then I'm going to put the cover on and make sure that everything is centered inside the cover. This is sticking out just a tad. Let me see if I move that up. I think it might just be a little bit long. I don't know why I didn't notice that before, but there we go. All right, now I've got my binder clips. I am going to clip everything down, holding it pretty tight so that nothing moves, doesn't shift on me. All right, go ahead and lock these down. It's a little bit easier to work if these little prongs are down. Plus, it's going to help hold these inside papers down. Okay, let me get my book, my piercing book. All right, and I did not make a template for this. I just go through and use my grid to go ahead and mark these spots. So I believe that this is 9 inches. So I'm going to find the middle point. So I'm going to go to 4.5. And I'm going to get it at approximately 4.5. I'm going to come in about 1 inch on the bottom and on the top. And then I'm going to get right in the center of those. So I'm going to go 2.5 in. All right, close enough. I'm not worried about being exact. I just want to make sure that I've got 5 holes here. I'm going to go ahead and make them just a little bit bigger. Okay, and just like with the 3-hole, you're going to give yourself 3 times the height of the book. I'm going to use this reddish wax thread. It just kind of goes with this. I'm going to go down the center hole. There's so much going on here. Is that it? That's it. Okay. I'm going to try to hold the thread taut the entire time I'm doing this. All right. And then again, I'm going to pull it taut. Just make sure it's staying tight along the way. I'm going to go back up this one. And I believe I pierced the thread, so let's try that again. If you pierce the thread, you want to make sure that you go back and fix that. You won't be able to pull it tight if you don't. So again, every time I go through one of these, I'm going to pull both ends just to make sure that my binding is nice and tight along the way. And then I am going to skip this middle one, and I'm going to go up here to this guy. It is the second from the top. All right, let's pull that again. And we'll pull this tight. Then we're going to go into this top piercing. Don't feel like I'm finding it here. Sometimes you just have to make that hole a little bit bigger, and then it's easier. All right, again, I'm going to give everything a tug, make sure it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to go back down to this second from the top hole. Pull everything nice and tight. How are we feeling? Everything feels good. Okay, so now it should look like this. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go right back through the center, and again, making sure that we don't pierce the wax thread that's already there. And there we go. Let's pull it tight again. And this should be on the other side of that string. So you do want to have your wax thread on either side of that center string. All right. We're going to do a granny knot. So like you would regularly tie, and then we're going to flip it and go the opposite direction. That way it doesn't slip out, because this is wax thread, and if you just tie it in a regular knot, it will eventually work loose. So you want to make sure that you're alternating the way you tie that. So right over left, left over right. Okay. Let me put all of this stuff away. And good deal. Look, nice binding. Very nice. Okay, you know I did 3 signatures, and you have to be wondering why I just stitched this and I didn't put it in an actual book with a cover. I'm going to do something a little bit different with this. I did do a practice round with this because I just wanted to see whether or not it would work, and it appears that it did. I did a lot of searching online. I couldn't find anything like it. I think it was probably just my search method, though. I'm sure that this has been done before. So I know it has been done before. I just didn't know how it would work in this context. This is my practice journal. And what I did was I did 3 signatures, but then I glued them together, right? And I didn't want to put an entire cover over them. So I had this thin piece of junk mail that I decided to just wrap across the back here. And it still lays flat, right? And it works just fine. The only issue with this is that it doesn't go all the way down. You want to leave a space in there so that it's flexible. See? And when it lays flat, it does lay flat. So it doesn't harm it in any way. See, and it kind of is off kilter. However, I managed to do this kind of on a fluke, so I don't know that I could actually repeat this. So I decided to go in a different direction. I really wanted a flexible piece to cover these signatures. And I thought, well, I could do like an elastic lace or something, but the lace bit just wasn't working for me. I didn't think that it belonged with the overall feel with this journal. So I decided not to do a stretchy lace that would, you know, have some give and everything. So what I still had laying around, and I thought, you know what, this might work, is this tissue. This is just paper towel. I did not plan on using it. This is the paper towel I was using to clean up this nonstick mat when we were doing all of the dyeing in the original video, in the very first video. And I had it just crumpled up and it was sitting to the side, and I thought it dried beautifully. And so I was like, you know what? I am going to use this. It is pretty flimsy the way it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a skin out of it. So I am using matte medium. You can use any PVA glue that you want to use. I'm just choosing to use matte medium because it's what I've always used to make these skins. This is something that I've done in the past in some of my mixed media stuff. I'm going to go ahead and put a thin layer of glue down just to get this started. Don't let this intimidate you. It's a lot of fun actually, and I think that you'll like the results. And then I'm going to go back over it here and spread this out. So you want the glue on the top and the bottom on both sides. And then you're going to just be very gentle. That's why this silicone brush is so nice. It's very gentle. And then just like anytime I do any kind of collage work, I'm going to go in and do this just a section at a time. This is the same method I use for laying down large pieces of paper, just a section at a time. And this is the distress inks and the distress oxides. So it is reconstituting. So you'll notice that some of this glue under here is turning a little bit yellowish or orangish. And that's fine. It is fine. It won't harm it. So we'll just keep working in small sections. This is actually something that I've done in the past. I've never done it with paper towel, but I've done it with colored tissue paper and layered them and made some really nice stained glass looking projects. Maybe I should do a video on that. Let me know if you might be interested in that. And I could certainly do that. So this is a little bit extra. I get it. But I didn't know that this was the direction I was going to go in. I wanted to do a junk mail journal, but I also wanted to do just a little bit something different with the binding. And I started the process and didn't have everything in place. So it was kind of just coming to me as I went, which sometimes is just how it works. Sometimes I know exactly what I'm doing, and then other times, you know, I'd have to shift gears, or I'm still planning after I've gotten started. You want to definitely use a non-stick mat or a Teflon sheet, or a glass mat would also work. You want a non-stick surface. When this dries, you want to be able to peel this off. And don't worry, it'll dry a little bit darker than this. Okay, and that's it. You don't want to have really, really thick, gloopy, gloppy layers, so you do want to make sure it's kind of smoothed out underneath and on top, but it's going to be really wet. It's going to be pretty juicy here, so don't let that bother you though. It will dry just fine. You're going to set it aside. You're going to let it dry. Preferably overnight. You're going to let it dry for half a day, a full day. I did mine in the evening and just let it dry overnight, and fingers crossed, was hoping that it was going to work. And it did. Now, this was a 2-ply paper towel. I should have mentioned that. And I did pull them apart. So you only want to do a single ply. You don't want to do the 2-ply. Unless you just want it a little bit thicker, a little bit sturdier, then you could do the 2-ply. There's not a problem with that. I just separated mine and did a single ply. So this is the example. I'm going to set this aside because I wanted to show you how to do it. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like. I've already cut up my sheet. So when you peel it off, it's going to have a textured side. It is much sturdier now. I could not have done this with the paper towel before adding the matte medium to it or the glue. Okay, so you could do this method, like I said, with matte medium, Mod Podge, a PVA glue, anything like that that you would normally use. And I just use matte medium again because that's just how I've always done this particular project. So you're going to have a shiny side. The shiny side is going to be whatever side was on the Teflon or the glass mat, the non-stick mat. That's your shiny side. Okay. And then you have a dull side that has a lot more texture on it. And you can use either side that you want. I liked the shiny side. That's the side I'm going to use. I know when you look at it up close, it doesn't look terribly dark, but look at it when you put it down and you can see all of those colors through there. I love it. I love it, love it. And I really like the shiny side. So what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm wrapping the spine of my signatures. And let me show you what the other two look like. I just wanted something a little bit extra on these spines. And again, I didn't want to wrap all the way around because I just found that that was just kind of tricky for me. Something else I discovered when I was going through this process is that one of my envelopes is longer. See that? And I didn't realize it until I was like in the project. I should have cut this down so that they were even. In a perfect world, that's what I would have done. It is what it is. I did go ahead and decide to use the taller signature as my middle signature and then put the two smaller ones on the ends. And I'm kind of just lining them up so that they're not flush at the bottom. They're kind of all just centered. And that's the way I'm going to do this. Okay, I wanted the rough edge to be on the outside of the cover. I didn't want the part where I actually cut it in half with the scissors, that straight edge. I didn't want that to be on the outside part of this. So what I'm going to do here is get it centered to kind of match this other one. I want to make sure I give enough space on each side. And you'll notice that this all came from one sheet, but this one is longer than this one. And it just had to do with the way that it was pressed out when we were gluing. Some of it had wrinkles and is kind of gathered up, and then other parts laid out a little bit smoother. So it's not going to be perfect. If you're looking for perfection, it is not going to be that, but this is what we like. We like the variation, right? Okay, I've got that lined up. Easy way for me to do this was to hold it in place and then go ahead and glue this on. I'm going to make sure that I've got all of the edges glued. Put a lot of glue in the center here. This isn't going to mess up anything to add glue to this. Skins aren't a new idea, but I originally got this idea because my ex was a fine artist, and he used to tell stories about being in the dorms at college, and he was in the art dorms, and he said they used to play pranks on each other by making these skins out of acrylic paint, and then they would take the skins after they dried and they would just toss it onto somebody's work. Do you know what I just did? Can't believe I did that. I didn't glue the shiny side down. I ended up gluing the textured side. I don't think it's that noticeable, and it's going to give it some texture, so it'll be fine. That's what I get for trying to talk and work at the same time. Okay. Back to the story, though. He says that they used to play pranks on each other when they had big projects due, and they would take those skins. How mean is that? You work on this art project for forever, and then they would take those skins, those acrylic paint skins, and they would toss them onto their completed work, and somebody would freak out thinking that paint had spilled all over their work. And so it just gave me the idea of actually using it to create stuff. And I'm not the first person to do that. I know it's existed a lot longer than that. I'm just telling you that that's where the original idea had come with me. And I've done some mixed media projects where I used that technique of making the skins. Let's put it all together here and see what that looks like, since I was yapping and wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and I got the texture side rather than the shiny side. So let's see how that's going to look. It's just smooth back here and a little bit textured up there. It still feels good. And I don't think that it's terribly noticeable, but either side will work. You can use either side, obviously, because we've done that. Okay, now for the difficult part. This is going to be the fiddly part. All right, I have a new bottle of Mod Podge. That's what I'm going to use to go ahead and glue this together. The reason I am using Mod Podge is because I needed a thicker glue. I could have used this matte medium, but this particular matte medium is really, really thin. I used it for the skin because when it dries, it's not sticky. Mod Podge tends to dry kind of sticky on the surface, and I didn't want these skins to stick together, so I decided to use the matte medium. But I do want to use the thicker glue, the Mod Podge, to glue these actual signatures together. And it's just going to be a lot easier than using my art glitter glue with that fine tip. It would take forever. We're going to put glue on the smaller one because we're going to line them up at the spine, not at the edge. And the center signature is just slightly longer, like 1/8 of an inch longer. So that's why I'm going to put glue on this one. So let's go ahead and get started. I want an even application, but it doesn't need to be super thick or anything. I don't want it to be like glopping over the edges. I want it to be nice and smooth, but it does need to be all over. And I really need to focus like on the center part here because I can always go back and get a lot of the edges. What I can't get is this center part. I want to make sure there's plenty of glue. I'm not going to go all the way to the end because it's not going to meet there. So I'm going to go right about to the point where it starts to round down. Those ends aren't going to meet, and I'm not going to try to force them to meet. All right, I think that we're ready to go here. Moment of truth. This is kind of nerve-wracking, especially when I'm working with all of this wax paper. All right. Again, this is the top part. And I'm going to get down kind of at eye level to make sure that these are lined up pretty well. Height-wise. So let's see, does that look good? That looks really good. And putting them down, they're flat. Okay. Let's come inside here and work on really pressing these down. And again, if you don't want to do this and you want to just have 3 standalone junk mail junk journals, by all means, if you have a different cover that you want to stitch them into, go for it. This is just something different that I wanted to try, and I thought that this would be a good project for it. All right, it's in there. I'm going to go ahead and let it dry. Let me clean off this wax paper. It shouldn't stick, but I want to make sure it does not. Let me put that back in there. Take a look at this side. Okay, looks good. All right. Now we're going to work on the bottom. This will be good too because now I can test it out with this journal and see if there's anything that I would change or do differently next time. All right, let me set that aside. A lot of times I make these journals and I put them on display. I just set them out. This one I plan on actually moving around quite a bit because I want to see how durable it is, to see if this is a technique that I would like to keep using. If anybody knows what this is, I looked up glued signatures. I looked up glued signature binding. I know that you do this with the accordion binding that I've been doing, which is actually the accordion book that I'm working on. That one is what inspired me to actually do this method. I didn't want an accordion in there because I wanted those spines to show. So I didn't want to use the accordion binding. So that is what inspired me to do this. But any of you know what that is, because I would love to see what other people are doing, if there's different techniques for it. Because again, I was novice at this, and hopefully I'm doing it right. Okay. This is the top. I don't want to get this mixed up. But I have to work quickly before the glue dries. Okay. I'm flipping this over So this is the top, this is the bottom. I'm going to do the same here. Top and bottom, I'm going to get down to eye level and make sure that I'm lining them up properly. And I can tell already the signature isn't lined up on the spine, but I think that widthwise it is. So let's go ahead and put this down. There, it's all the way down. Is that lined up? It looks like it is. The spine looks pretty lined up. Okay. I think that I did it. And I thought honestly that it was going to be a lot more fiddly. But since that wasn't the first time that I've done it, maybe that's why it went a little bit smoother. I did not use wax paper the first time, and that was kind of a mess though. All right. Let's go in here and press this all down, make sure it's down nice and good. Looks good. Let's check this side. Looks good. I'm going to clean off the extra glue. So if this ends up working for me, then you can give it a try, right? Okay. And look at how flat it lays. It lays so flat. That is going to be awesome. Now, I'm going to put a book, a heavy, heavy book. This is World Book Dictionary, L through Z. I'm going to set it right on top. I'm going to let it dry like this for several hours, and then we'll come back and we'll do a flip through. All right, I haven't yet created any journaling cards or tags for this, so I'm just going to use a makeshift tag to show you where all of the pockets are. I did put little corners to help reinforce the corners here. Of course, we've got the washi tape. This is a piece of vellum that I had in my stash, and then I just used some little elements from and ephemera from other collections to kind of piece that together. I really like these leaves, and it is dimensional. Some of it's up on foam tape, and then here is the actual spine of the book. I love the way it looks. I love the way these came together and kind of brought it together. But then you've got these peaks, these little pops of color up here too. And then you can see I didn't take the glue all the way down, and this is why. But it's nice and sturdy. I did put a little leaf back here, and again with the little corners to help reinforce those edges, and then the washi tape there. All right, let's go ahead and start flipping through. Get my tag ready. So this is a window from the envelope, and so I did pop this in here, and I wasn't sure what order I was going to do it in when I first put it together, so it's just kind of what that ended up looking like. It's mostly covered, but like I said, I wasn't sure of the direction, so there you go. This is a rub-on, so much goodness, lots and lots of journaling space, more journaling space, lots of collage work with the collection and journaling space. Another window here. This is an envelope that's been opened up. So then we have a tuck here, these rub-ons, but then there you go. So we can put whatever. It'll be fun to decorate that. And here we go. There's a pocket. This is the bottom of a bag. So there's that deep pocket. These are some flowers that I had die cut for another project. There's a little window there. I've covered over it on the other side though. Here is a side tuck. And this is where it's been covered over, but here's a side tuck. Here's a pocket. This is just journaling space. And then I really liked this blue-green here. This is the bottom or side of an envelope here. So you can put something in there and change that up. And here's another pocket there or side tuck. Again, here. I used the border on that piece of junk mail. All right, and then there's some more writing space, writing space, writing space, writing space, and then there is a pocket here, and then this is where signature 1 and signature 2 meet. Again, the little window, because it is an envelope and it had a window, so you have to prepare ahead of time. So put it together. I would put it together and then do a flip through to see where you need to add your elements. All right, some collage work, more collage work, and then there's a side tuck there. I was cutting off the bottoms of these envelopes and I ended up using them as pockets. Just some journaling space. I covered this up. I wanted to leave a lot of this because I just love the way that this crackling campfire looked on that yellow. A pocket there and a pocket there. Important account information enclosed. There's a side tuck there. There's a little rough one here. I ended up leaving it rough cut. I didn't trim it down, so it kind of hangs over. I liked that look. All right, this is for a tall skinny, so you can journal, 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 and then there you go. And then here's the center here. I just collaged this and I did it all the way across. And then this looks like the other side, so you can journal, 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 and then there is a little pocket there. All of this is for journaling space. Here's a little side tuck, and then we flip over, and then this is where the actual pockets are. So pocket. And the other one here. There's a little side tuck. There's another one there. Look at all of that orange and stuff. It looks great. Okay. And then this guy flips down. And there's a pocket in here. And again, it's visible. But this one I did a flip down. There's a little pocket there. And is this? Yep, that's a side tuck there. Lots and lots. Journaling space. Okay, and then this part is just paper clipped on, so you can remove it, and then it just looks like this. And then on this side, and then I left it completely blank on the inside because I liked the look of the kind of craft paper look with the crackling campfire on it. All right, this opens up, and then there's a pocket. You can see through there. There's collage work underneath here. Let's put this back on. So that's cool. You can write on the back of this and it can be hidden journaling. And then this is all just journaling space up here. And then there's a little tuck there, little pocket. This is all just journaling space. This is where signature 2 meets signature 3. So again, I've reinforced the edges here with the washi tape, so they just kind of overlap there. I may go back and do something here later, but I don't think so. I really like the way the colors look on that. It's lots of writing space. Again, there's a little window, lots of writing space. And then here we go. And then this is what it looks like on the other side. I left that little raw edge there. I left this blank for journaling or for pictures, whatever, more journaling space. Oh, and this is the one we did together, isn't it? So there's the little box. And then here we go. We put little pockets. These are all writing space, but they've got pockets. And then this one, you can see through. And there's this guy, and this is just journaling space. All of this is journaling space. And then there's this tiny little pocket here, and the rest of this is journaling space. And again, I used the bottom of this little envelope here, turned it around, made a pocket. Okay, and then this is a side pocket here, but it flips up. So I just ended up wrapping that around. There's a side tuck. There's a little tuck here. And then pocket and pocket. I've got to go through and put a lot of tags and journaling cards in here. There's so much space. All right, and then journaling. And then a pocket here. Pocket and journaling here. There's more journaling on that side. This side has the visible pocket. There's journaling space and a pocket. This is all journaling space. And then this is the last page. So I'm going to leave this one blank also. I really like the look of it. So lots of journaling space, and then the end. So that was it. How fun was that? It's really sturdy. Look, it lays completely open. So the gluing the signatures together was just fine. It works great actually. So if you don't mind that look, then there you go. And then it's expandable too, because we didn't go all the way to the end. So it'll still take a lot of that ephemera and still look good. So it's nice and bouncy, and it's got good distribution of all of the elements right now. So it's nice and even. It feels great. And I love that you can go through it. It has a different vibe with each signature. But it's all fall. It all looks great together. Those hand-dyed papers really in each section kind of bring it together and make it a little bit more cohesive, as does the washi tape on all of the ends, and then just using the same colors. That crackling campfire, wild honey, scattered straw, and crushed olive. I think that kind of helped to bring it all together as well. So just lots of scraps. I used up so many scraps with this, and I'll probably use up the last bit of them making tags and journal cards. So I'd be interested in knowing what you think. I absolutely loved it. I think it's a cute little project. I'll definitely do this again. And I've also got that prototype now that I need to go in and decorate. So I'll have a couple of them. I really like the way a lot of the junk mail is still visible in the book. If you look closely enough, you can still see a lot of it in there, and that we worked with it and not against it. And it still came out to be such a pretty, pretty project, even though some of that is still visible. Please put any questions or suggestions down in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply. I really hope that you enjoyed this 3-day project. I absolutely loved doing this and putting it together. And I've completely changed my mind about using junk mail. Before, it was something that I had never done, and now I would totally do it again, because it was just easy breezy. So now I'm going to be adding junk mail collecting to my stash. I've got to make lots of room. Thank you for spending some time with me, and until next time, bye.